Hello and welcome to What Culture Wrestling with myself, Andrew Pollard. I hope you're doing well today. For today, we have a review of AEW Fight Forever. Yes, the wait is finally over. AEW Fight Forever is here. I've been playing it for the last week or so on the PlayStation 5. And so let's see whether it's any good. Now, the gameplay, first and foremost, it's so easy to pick up. It's just kind of pick up and play, literally. It's easy to get to grips with the controls. It's very basic controls, and I don't mean that in a bad way. But also, it's one of those games where it's easy to learn the controls, but a little trickier to master. Again, in a good way, because you don't want to pick this game up and be an expert straight away. You don't have to be a gaming pro to be able to pick this up and just have a whole load of fun. There's an arcade feel to all of the action. And yes, you can clearly see the influence of, say, WWF No Mercy, all the early SmackDown games. And the action here, it's quick action. It's intergender action, which is a really nice touch here. It's not a case of having to go to intergender matches, just any match you can have anyone on the roster in it. And there's no rating system, so everybody has a sense of equalness. You can beat anybody with anybody. It's all about getting momentum and then taking down your opponent. But at the end of the day, it comes down to signature moves and finishing moves. And one of the bits I like a hell of a lot about Fight Forever is that finishing moves actually work. They do what they do exactly as they say on the tin. And there's an impact as well with some of the moves. Like, for instance, Kenny Omega, the V trigger, that it's like, oof, when you hit that, there's just a sense of brutality, the impact it makes. And then in terms of impact as well, there's weapons, there's plenty of weapons. My personal favorite is the skateboard, which you can then ride around on and hit people with. It's again, daft fun. And in terms of also maybe some other bits it could do with tweaking, the referees do seem to sometimes takes them a little while to get down to start their 3 count. There's a little bit of clunkiness to the action, but it's, as I mentioned, the word of the day today is going to be fun. That is going to come up a lot throughout this video, but there is a sense of clunkiness. Overall, the gameplay's it's brisk, it's quick, it's fluid. The menu screens, the load screens, it all feels really polished in that regard in terms of how it looks. Like I mentioned, the menu screens, the load times are really quick. You select who you want to go, you select where you want to fight, in what venue, what arena, and within 10 seconds you're there. It's nice. And in terms of getting there, the entrances, now you may have seen online ahead of Fight Forever's release that it's not what you'd normally get from a modern wrestling game in terms of entrances. There's no elaborate entrances. It's kind of, I guess if I was going to estimate it, each wrestler gets 5 seconds of entrance. They walk out onto the top of the ramp, they do their pose or whatever they do, the music's playing briefly, the videos on the wall, and you control the pyro, which is a nice touch. So by pressing buttons, you can send off pyros or smoke or lights. But the entrances are very brief, and it took me a little while to get used to it, because it's like, I'm not sure if I like that. But again, it's all part of the pacing of the game. This is a very fast-paced game. Now, one concern I know that people did have, I saw it online, I saw some of the early footage, the early shots that came out of Fight Forever, and it didn't look that great. Some wrestlers still don't look ideal, but for the most part, most of it looks really good. Does it look like a high-end, in this case, for my case, PlayStation 5 game? No, it doesn't. But again, that's not really what Fight Forever is going for. It's just going for unique spins on the wrestlers. It's not photorealistic, although some people do look absolutely fantastic. Moxley looks great. Ricky Starks, I'll get to him a bit later because I played through Road to Elite with him. Sting looks great. Orange Cassidy, there's so many people that look really good, but there are 1 or 2 character models where it's like, okay, like the Bucks, for instance, don't particularly look that great, which is surprising because they're EVPs. For the matches themselves, though, the match types, it's a smidge limited. That's not to say, again, it's not fun. It's just, it is limited. There's singles matches, there's singles 3-ways, there's singles 4-ways, there's tag matches, there's a singles ladder match, there's a casino battle royale, and there's the exploding barbed wire match, which is 1-on-1. So it is a little bit limited. But what we've got here is good. The ladder match itself is really nicely done. I really like, there's a nice mechanic to actually get in, because you have to get the casino chip at the top of the ladder, and there's a really nice mechanic to how you get that down. It feels nice. The movement up the ladder as well feels a lot more fluid and easy to do. It's, again, that's part of what Fight Forever is going for, is it's easy, it's accessible for everybody, and that's really cool. Now, I mentioned the casino battle royale. Now, this one's a little bit weird because you're only allowed 4 wrestlers in the match at any one time. I mean, obviously in the casino battle royales in real life, you're not. That's just, it's kind of a free-for-all as and when the different suits come to the ring. But in this, the game only allows you to have 4 players in at any one time. So for somebody else to enter the match, you have to have eliminated somebody. Somebody has to be eliminated. It tops out, it maxes out at 4, which it felt a little bit like the old Royal Rumble on the Dreamcast, where you had the Rumble match where you'd only have, I think was that 6 or was that 4 people you could have in the ring at any time? But the Casino Battle Royale doesn't really do much for me in that regard. But it does seem the game does limit it to 4 people in the ring in any match. There's no match where you have more than 4 in the ring at any one time. Now, I should also say that online matches, I've yet to play. When I've been playing the game, the servers were not up at this point in time, so I cannot comment on what it's like to play online. I cannot comment on the stability of the servers, but of course you're probably all waiting to hear about the exploding barbed wire match, which, as you would expect, is, I mean, no pun intended, it is a blast. It's really fun. You have basically 2 minutes and then the ring's going to explode. Obviously the barbed wire's around there. If you hit the ropes, they're electrified. There's tables set up in the corner with electrics on there, so if you throw people into that, there's a mini explosion. But then once the clock hits 2 minutes, the whole ring just blows up, and it blows up big time. There is supposedly there is a feature in here as an Easter egg where sometimes the ring will just will fizzle out like Kenny Omega and Jon Moxley. But there is supposedly an Easter egg where that will happen at times. It's not happened to me yet, so I can't say for certain that happens, but it's very cool when the big explosion goes off and you get blown to bits. You've got blood everywhere. The blood on this, it's a very gnarly game, especially in the barbed wire match. The blood just pours out of people onto the mat. I can see why there was a little bit of pushback on the rating originally, which was supposedly part of the delays. Now, the roster, I should address the roster because it's a slightly odd roster in some ways. You start with, I think it's just over 50 wrestlers. There are 2 people you can unlock in the store with in-game purchases, and that's Cody Rhodes and Aubrey Edwards. It's like, okay, I wasn't maybe expecting Aubrey as an unlockable wrestler, but hey, there we go. Paul White and Mr. Brody Lee are in there somewhere, but I've yet to work out how to unlock them in the ways that I've been playing. I presume there's something that triggers that in Road to Elite, maybe. So there are other people in there to get at, and there will be DLC on the way. I mean, there's a DLC already announced with FTR, with the Bunny, with Hook, with Danhausen, and Keith Lee, I think, is the other one. You can tell how long the game's been in development, as in they've started this game, and that was the roster, and then it's taken another year, and this is the roster, and another year, and then this is the roster. So don't be expecting to see, a total who's who of AEW. Now, of course, I'm sure that there will be more DLC packs made available over the next coming months, so this problem should be addressed. But there's lots of nice touches to each wrestler. I mentioned before about each person feels unique. There's an individualness to them. MJF, for example, whereas other people, a certain button causes them to kind of like duck to one side. With MJF, he drops to his knees and he begs off. But then the cool bit is during that, you can then attack your opponent, lull him into a false sense of security. Orange Cassidy is a load of fun to play at. It's ridiculously entertaining to just pop your hands in your pockets and do the shin kicks. It's nice little touches like this that make Fight Forever so much fun. Again, that word. And in terms of fun, it does not get any more fun than Road to Elite. Now, this is basically the storyline, the career mode, I guess is one way to call it, where you start as either an existing AEW wrestler or a created wrestler, because it wouldn't be an AEW wrestler if you create. I mean, you could create an AEW wrestler. More on that shortly. But yeah, you start on this. You get a phone call from Tony Khan to basically say, do you want to come and be in the Casino Battle Royal at Double or Nothing? Yeah, cool, no worries. And from there, it's an open book as to where you go and what happens, which is. Man, I like that, where there's no straight linear path you have to go on. This is very much you choose your own destiny. First of all, you compete on Dynamite, then it opens up where you can compete on Dark and Rampage, and obviously the aim is pay-per-views. You play through one calendar year, so you have 4 pay-per-views essentially, and each week is in a new city, and this is where, to me, this is the bit I had the most fun with. Each new city offers up the chance to. They're not mini games. I mean, there are mini games. We'll get to those as well. But it's not mini games as such. But there's extra elements to Road to Elite, where each new city you can go and explore a certain sightseeing spot, a hot spot, which is really nice. It's almost like a history lesson. You almost learn bits about like certain monuments and certain areas and what's the history behind these cities, these towns. You also get to go out and sample the local food if you want. You don't have to, and you don't have to go sightseeing. You can choose to work out in the gym. You can go and do media appearances, press appearances, sign-ins. But for me, it's like, right, let's go and see the sights. Let's go and have a bite to eat. And then when you go to a restaurant, you get to sample that that town or city's local delicacy, local speciality, which is, it's a really simple, again, daft touch, but it just brings, it adds so much to the whole Fight Forever party. Go and see the sites. Go in and get a history lesson on the Liberty Bell from John Moxley, because you will bump into other wrestlers as well. Bumping into Sting at Venice Beach with his full face paint on the beach. It's just silly. It's silly stuff, but it's just like, God, man, this is nice. It's just entertaining. And as you travel between city to city, it cuts out to basically a map with a plane, and you go. It's just little animations like this make this so endearing. It reminded me of Street Fighter, where when you go from fight to fight and you go around on the map. And in terms of the actual wrestling, because there is wrestling to be done on Road to Elite, it's all dependent on how you do and how you interact with people. If you lose a match, that takes your story in a different path. And if you bump into a certain person, a certain wrestler, how you respond to them and interact with them, again, deviates your path as to how your story's going to be. I'm not going to go too deep into the story because I don't want to spoil anything. There's lots of really nice surprises in here, lots of Easter eggs. It's all done tongue-in-cheek. A Fight Forever itself is a game that's done tongue-in-cheek. There's a really good sense of humor just bubbling underneath, and it comes out a lot in Road to Elite. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. Now, I did mention mini-games. There are mini-games on this. When it was announced there were going to be mini-games on Fight Forever, I felt it was needless. I just thought, why am I going to ever bother playing that? Again, though, they're really, really enjoyable. They're really quick. You start with 3 mini games. There's an AEW trivia quiz. There's a chip collector where you're in the ring with 3 other people and chips fall from the sky, and you have to collect the most chips. And then there's also a really cool mini game where you have to basically mimic Penta's moves. It's essentially a dance-off. There's 4 of you in the ring. Penta's outside the ring. He does certain poses by hitting certain buttons. You have to copy that, and whoever does it most accurately wins. There's a whole lot of other mini games to unlock, supposedly in Road to Elite mode. Now, I played through Road to Elite twice, and I've not unlocked any. I think just because I really do. You can play the mini games in Road to Elite as well, and every time I've done it there, I got my backside handed to me. So I think that's probably the problem there. In terms of problems, one thing in Fight Forever that a lot of people will be frustrated with is the creation suite. Some people do just buy the latest 2K games to create their own, well, not even their own wrestlers, to create other wrestlers. So if you're used to that, Fight Forever is going to be a major shock to your system, I guess, would be one way to put it. It's very minimal. It's very bare bones. It feels very much geared towards creating your own fighter for a beat 'em up. Than it does to be able to replicate other wrestlers necessarily, if that makes sense. You can create your own male or female performer, but it's just the choices in terms of faces. You have, I think it's 8 default faces you have, and you just choose those default faces. You can change the eye color, you can change the eyebrows, but the structure of the face is set in stone. And like the hair, I think it was 17 selections of hair, whereas obviously if you used to play in, say, 2K23, literally hundreds of hair choices or face choice, or you can obviously change the size and features. So it's very minimal, it's very basic, but it's still fun. It's still fun to make your own creations, but don't be expecting to create a roster of, you know, WWE stars or legends of yesteryear. But there's again teases for other wrestlers in here, like, because you can obviously make your own music, well, not make your own music, but choose your own entrance theme, and there's so many to choose from, including a bunch of wrestlers that aren't in the game, which is interesting. That could be a hint at people who may be added in the future, like Makito's in there, Angelico, the Hybrid 2's theme, which is a really underrated entrance theme. That's in there. FTR's is in there. Obviously, they're going to be in the game anyway. So there's a lot to choose from. And the moveset is extensive. While the actual physical creation is minimal, the moveset is bonkers. There's so much to choose from. So it's swings and roundabouts. For what Fight Forever is going for, the feel, the vibe, the creation suite is fine. But if you're one of those that wants extensive, in-depth, detailed, yeah, you're going to struggle with this a lot. Also, I should probably mention with the creations as well, it doesn't look like you can actually upload or download. So whatever you create is going to be your own. Basically, that's it. You can only use what you create. So that might be another slight turn off for some people. Right, AEW Fight Forever, as an overview, it's very much designed to pick up and play with a focus on the gameplay. Matches, they're usually quick, they're easy to get straight into, there's a briskness to everything about this game. The biggest compliment I can give AEW Fight Forever is it's the sort of game that me and my friends back during our university days would have had such a blast getting together, having a few beers, and just spending hours beating the tar out of each other on this. It's a game that works really well on its own, but is also one of those where if you get a group of pals together, it's going to be great. It's a game that has some flaws, like I mentioned. It's not perfect, it's not flawless, but for a first venture from AEW into video games proper, it's a really positive, encouraging release. It's a really enjoyable, fun game geared towards everybody being able just to pick it up, play it for a few minutes, have the time of their lives. That's it. It's a good old dollop of daft fun, and it will put a smile on your face. If I'm going to give it a rating, say out of 10, probably leaning towards a 7, maybe an 8. So it's a good game. I will say it again, and people will be sick of this. It's a fun game. There's so much here that just ticks all the right boxes. And I'm going to continue to have a lot of fun playing this. So with that, I've been Andrew Pollard from What Culture Wrestling. Check out more videos here, somewhere around here. And I will catch you down the line.